Welcome back, folks. As I mentioned, I'm going to be here all day, in and out, doing lots of fun live streams. This one's a little different because I'm doing a one-on-one. So stay tuned for a really great interview with my guest. Speaking of which, let me do the formal introduction. I'm pleased to be interviewing one of our Biz Book Publishing Hub founding partners. Our hub partners are experts who support entrepreneurs along their author journey. Before we dive in, here is a quick word from our sponsor. Today's guest is known as the Step It Up Queen. She's on a mission to empower entrepreneurs to create positive change in the world, focusing on helping her clients gain clarity, increase profits, and infuse more fun into their journeys. She brings over 20 years of experience as a business coach and speaker. Having guided thousands of individuals to complete their projects, she specializes in coaching thought leaders through writing and publishing transformative books. Despite facing significant challenges with dyslexia, she's an award-winning author of more than 30 books, including her latest, The Most Common Entrepreneurial Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. Her expertise lies in supporting coaches, speakers, and healers in promoting their messages to stand out and reach audiences they are meant to serve. As a book coach and acquisition editor for one of the largest entrepreneurial publishers in the United States, she is dedicated to helping others discover their unique magic and showcase their best work on the page. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Lisa MacDonald. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Robbie. It's so exciting to be here.
I had you on back when it was on the Schmooze. Now we get to focus a little more on the work you do around authors. So I'm actually kind of curious how you came to be doing these services, like getting involved in the world of book publishing and book writing. So where did this journey start for you?
It started with me not learning to read, I have to say. So, being dyslexic, I struggled to learn to read. It was brutal. I don't know if my mom and thought we were ever going to survive it because she would open up the book and I would make up a story. It was so much better than See Jane Run and all of that. And she was like, but what's on the page? I'm like, she's heartbroken, mom. Her boyfriend broke up with her. And so, it started with me trying to, guys, like my stories are better. So I always loved literature and stories. When I finally did, it clicked in my head. Oh, I don't have to have somebody read books to me. If I figure out how to read, then all of a sudden I figured out how to read pretty well. And that's kind of where it started, Robbie, was doing that. And then eventually, fast forward, I started teaching writing at the community college. And the dyslexia made me a popular teacher. And I was shocked because I was hiding the fact. I was so scared to teach because I can't pronounce words correctly. I goof up things and all of that. And my mentor told me, just own it. Just own it. The first day, let them know that you have this disability. So I did, and the students lined up. I have that problem too. I struggle. And then seeing them find the power of the words was so magical. And I was like, oh, I'm just helping them write essays. What would it be like to help people actually do books? Because I love books. I had been publishing for a long time. And so that transformed into helping the entrepreneurs get their books and their mission out there.
Oh my God, your story gives me goosebumps. um, because one, my children are just past the age of learning to read, and there was a moment where the light bulb went off with my oldest, where he went from struggling with us because the whole bunch of reasons he could not focus. It was not dyslexia, but he really was having trouble reading, and he would skip words, and he understood the gist of the page, so he would just, like you said, like fill in what was going on. And he has a great imagination, and so like you, like I could just give him a series of pictures and he would come up with a really elaborate and great, wonderful story. But if I asked him, at that time a few years ago, just to read the actual words on the page next to it, there was a little like push and pull, and that tension where you don't know why, you don't know what's going on. And then when he kind of got it, and now like he says, can I read tonight? Like as if he's being defiant. Can I read tonight after dinner? I'm like, I mean, all right, for like 15 minutes, like, and he goes to sleep every night looking at books. So that idea that you then took that gift that you had and you pursued teaching a writing class, I mean, that does feel like a big leap for somebody to for you to feel like I have a gift to share. Yes, I have this disability, but I also found a way through that. And I love that your mentor suggested you just be honest about it because you were relatable to other people who a lot of people don't figure out that they have dyslexia or dyscalculia until they're in college
Well,
because
the shame that came with it, because
yeah.
I had been shamed, and I was back in the time when they didn't help dyslexic people. So at school, I got tested, I got pulled in, they put me into resource class, and I was like, I don't fit here. I don't belong. What am I doing here? And so then they pulled in my parents and all of that. And my dad said, well, your brain just doesn't work normal. And your brain just doesn't work. So you have a choice. You can either stay in the easy class and get easy grades, or you can go into mainstream and you'll get no support and you'll probably get D's and F's. I go, put me in the D's and F club. And that's where I went. And can I tell you, I had multiple teachers tell me I would never be a writer.
Wow.
Multiple. I mean, I would be reading books on how to write because I was fascinated by the art of the story. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know how to get better. And they would start screaming at me and telling me, you'll never make it. You will fail, da, 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 da. So, even one of my papers in college, because of course I was pursuing it in college too. I think I got a C minus on it. I republished that sucker 5 times. I was like, there's a difference between academia and publishing. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a huge difference. And when there's a passion and there's a will, there is a way. But I was told many, many times I would never make it. And,
Man,
and I don't do the grammar part. I have experts who are good at the grammar, and I refer to that. But helping people construct and make a fun story or a fun book, that I love. So I stay in my lane and acknowledge that I still have the disability.
that piece you just said about staying in your lane, I think is so key. And a lot of times when people are new to an entrepreneurial business, they say yes to a lot of different services because people like, oh, can you do this? Sure. And then you say, you're like, ah, why not? Why not? Why not? But then there's this huge scope creep. And there's only a few things we truly excel at. And we don't really want or like to do these other things. So you seem to have really found the piece of the puzzle for the book process that you enjoy, and you have people around you like these hub partners that you can pull in, but you also now are working as an acquisition editor at a major publisher that focuses on entrepreneurial books. Your teachers, I mean, I feel like you should be dedicating books to them in the sense that maybe they spurred you to try harder and to take action when a lot of other people spin their wheels for years. You were like putting out books pretty much yearly for years.
Right. I mean, I have a friend who told me the worst thing to do, Lisa, is tell her no because I'm going to try so much harder. Right. I do have that oppositional side to me. That's what makes me a good entrepreneur. It's like, oh, I don't work well for other people. Tell me, I want to do what I want to do and what I'm good at and what life makes me alive, because I know that my work out in the world is going to be better by me being a cheerleader for others. And, that's what I love to do. So I will stay there. I would much rather do that than to get stuck to 9 to 5 and doing some admin work. I was like, that's
So
not fun.
how old were you when you published your first book, and was it fiction or nonfiction?
Let's see. I was 23, 24.
Mhm.
Somewhere around there. I had just barely graduated from college, and my goal was to just take the creative writing class and to keep on submitting, which is what I did. And I think I got a nonfiction book was the first one, and 2 months later, my fiction book came out. So all of a sudden, when I finally hit, and I had a pile. That was back when you got paper rejections. I had piles, and I've gone to schools and rolled them out, hundreds and hundreds of rejections. It's like, yeah, well, I'm going to keep on banging on this door until we get a yes. And that was back before the self-publish movement and all that. But I was like, we are going to go and we're going to keep doing it until we get a yes. And so, yeah, I think I had 2 books, 3 books in 1 year when I finally hit.
After a lot of tenacity on your part, which is another thing I think people who have to overcome a learning disability, they have resilience, they have tenacity. They don't see a path forward as being only one way. And so you were willing to keep trying. I think that's fantastic that you were able to apply that resilience to this situation. So you end up teaching a writing class. You then realize you can help them not just be writing papers, but what if you could be helping people write books? Were you already entrepreneurial at that point? Did you know other entrepreneurs? Like, you now
Oh
work
yeah.
specifically
Oh
with
yeah. I mean,
them.
I've been an entrepreneur for, I don't know, over probably close to 30 years by that. Getting closer in the late 20 years of that. And I've been publishing my own books for many, many years. So I think I have 32 right now. So by that point, I probably had 28, 29. So I definitely had a lot of experience behind my back and a lot of seasoning and working with many different kinds of publishers and many different genres, because that was before I knew about marketing and all that fun stuff. If a publisher came to me and said, "Will you write a book on?" I'm like, "Yes. Yep, here we go. Let's go." So I really loved getting published.
Yeah.
I was
I
addicted. I was fully feeling the adrenaline on that one.
Yeah, so tell me how you ended up with the audience of entrepreneurs for helping folks bring books to life.
Well, even how I found coaching was by me speaking about my books. So all of a sudden you get books published, they expect you to promote it. And so I started speaking and people kept coming up to me and asking me to work with them. And I was so confused. I'm like, "But I'm not a therapist." And they're like, "But you're doing what we want to do. So will you coach?" And I tried it out. I'm like, "You can get paid for this? I'm in." Total. And then people start going, "Hey, can you help me write a book?" And I'm like, "Hey, this is fun. Yeah, sure. This is a whole lot easier to help people craft it when you have something to work with." And it was like, okay, this is a lot of fun.
I have interviewed people who were kind of riding the wave of coaching in around 2000, 2002, maybe 1998 timeframe, when coaching in the business world became not well known, but it started to become more established. Because at that time, if you talked about being a coach, people asked what sport.
Yeah, you had to explain it. You definitely had to explain it.
Yeah, so it's really different. It's amazing, like 25 years later, how much of that has shifted, where, business coaching, executive coaching is sort of part of the norm, the culture. But at the time, how could you have thought this was even a thing to sell, given that profession wasn't like around? Like
Well,
you
I
couldn't
watched
point to it.
Oprah. My first exposure to a coach was Oprah, and she was interviewing a coach, and I was like, "That's super cool." Because I was always very curious about psychology, and I didn't know if I wanted to become a psychologist or not. But the 13 years and the math, it was kind of, but I was very fascinated by psychology and how do you move people forward. And nowadays we would call it positive psychology. I really love seeing what got people to get positive things in their life. And so that I was fascinated with. And it was, and one of the great things about coaching is you can create it the way you want it to. Yes,
Mhm.
there's some ethical things that you need to consider, but you can develop your business and serve people the way you want with coaching, because it's no hard fast. You have to do it a certain way.
Back in the late 90s, I went to grad school and got my master's in social work. And I never had a plan to be a therapist. I was more interested in the macro organizing, community organizing, movements, people, groups. Still, I'm very motivated by the social connections of all of it. But, when I think about what is my training experience around coaching besides the living experience of having done it, I learned a lot. And back then, if I had known that business coaching was a thing in the late 90s, I might have just gone and skipped the masters and gone and just like gotten trained in coaching. I didn't like transferable skills were definitely were there, but I didn't understand that was an option. I think it was like more than a decade later before I realized that for all the years that I was showing up to meet with people, I remember this because I would show up with my BlackBerry, my brain. That was my phrase. I was like, "Oh, you want to meet? Sure. I meet at this coffee shop for the hour before my job. If you want to meet me, I'm there either Tuesdays or Thursdays, and I will show up with my BlackBerry, my brain. Just let me know what you want to talk about." And like, this is like the aughts, the early 2000s.
Mm,
That wasn't coaching in my mind. I didn't understand that, and I wasn't getting paid for it, but it was opening doors for me. I was learning a ton. And when I finally shifted to paying, getting paid for doing it, I was like, I have a lot of hours of doing this. Like, I really understand this. I just didn't know what it was called. So it is interesting
right.
that people came to you like, "Can we work together?" And you're like, What?
I was very, very well. And then at one point, I was a single mother. I needed to get out there. I needed to make some money. And I had 3 job offers for to be a therapist if I went and got the certification. And it was, I mean, I sat there for a good month coaching therapy. But then when I realized that coaching was more moving forward and more on the positive end and not so much with the mental health issues, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just I wasn't designed for that.
Mhm.
I've always been, I'm a mom of 8. I've been designed of moving people forward, getting their goals and being a mom. You see what was possible for them and you put in accountability and kick them in the butt every now and then when they need a little bit more boost. It was super. I was like, okay, transferable. You figure out the personality, what motivates them, and you just go. So it was a lot more of who I naturally was. So I did pick the coaching. Every once in a while, I'm like, I wonder what it would have been like if I would have chose, to be a therapist instead. But I think I picked the right one for me.
I had a fork in the road when I was deciding between 2 job offers when I first changed states back in my uh, mid-20s. I was either going to go into like a research job or I ended up organizing fundraising events.
I can't see you as a researcher.
It was like
Can't see
fork
that.
in the road, and I was like, huh. And I ended up going into fundraising events, which led to me working with major donors, which led to me running events of all scales, which led to me running community groups. Like it all makes sense in hindsight. But yes, those moments where you're faced with this decision, like, well, I can kind of do these things. I'm passionate. I'm an advocate. How can I take what I know and I've learned and experience and put it into this work? So speaking of which, what are the specific services that you offer authors today?
Well, what I love to do is I offer a content developmental edit. So I will look at your manuscript and see what the strengths are, what can upgrade to make it even stronger, where the little holes are, those kind of things. So if somebody already has a completed manuscript and going, is it ready? It's good to have somebody who is a professional, not just beta readers, but a professional look at it and say, and who understands your market. So with a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm like, you know what, if you did this and that, it would be a lot more marketable down this end. So there's that service. Also, I of course help people from the very beginning. If they are like, well, I don't know if I should write this book or this book or this book, and I don't know where to publish, we will, I can start from the very beginning and help them. So I typically go from all the way from the idea to completed manuscript. We will do a little bit of consulting on where to go with publishing, but that's where I refer them out to other people in the hub and to other people who do the other stuff better than I do.
Yeah, that content development piece, I want to actually talk about that because when I was new to writing a book, I didn't know at that point that there were different types of editors. So, I went to Upwork or one of those
Right.
places to get an editor, and I didn't have money to put towards the project. So I got what I paid for, to be honest. So I mean, gosh, Grammarly does a really good job just fixing commas. And I will say I made a mistake with my third book. I used the same editor, second and third book. The second book, I took the time to run everything I wrote through Grammarly before handing it off to her. So she was able to focus more on content development.
Right.
The second time we were in such a rush to get it out the door, timing wise, that she ended up spending a lot of time fixing my commas and my grammar and like not doing the content piece. And I just think, and because she has the ability to do both, and
Right.
people hire her to do
Right.
various things. So could you explain to those listening, like there's copy editing, there's developmental editing, there's proofreading. Like what are all these things and what do people need and when do they need them?
I would say everyone needs definitely a content editor, which is you're looking at the quality of the book. Did you stay on subject? Is there a main thing? Did you support your argument? All those things. Or did you go off to the left field? Did you change point of view? All those kind of things. It needs to have a really robust somebody that is critical, not just going to tell you that it's lovely because they're related to you and they're afraid. You need somebody that's going, this is what worked. This will sparkle. This would sparkle more if you did this. Could you do more of this here, and just make it a more well thought out, developed book, because reviewers will be nasty. They can be pretty harsh on you, and people in your professional business, if you're writing a business book, it does affect your image. If you do a good job, it will reflect positive. If you don't, it will definitely hurt your reputation and your business. So that's the content development. Then they get into different houses call different editors different things, but you definitely want somebody that goes through and making sure that everything is accurate, everything is cited correctly. Those footnotes and citations. That takes a special art for somebody to be able to pay attention to all of those. But you want somebody who will go fact check, look at it, and then you want somebody to go and looking for the grammar. I personally, my bias is I always have two editors go through my manuscripts on that. I mean, obviously I know that I come with a handicap, and I do use all the resources and everything else to get it clean as possible. But I like to have two editors go through for grammar, because it's really easy to miss mistakes. And so just having people looking for the grammar and making sure that all the spacing's correct and all of that fun stuff. So some people are more detail oriented than others, and so you want to have that. But the quality, you definitely, where to put the money in, cover, and then making sure that there's really good editing.
Yeah, when it comes to reviews, and we can talk more about reviews later, but I will say that people are really motivated to write a negative review, and there's not many people who go out of their way to write a positive review unless you ask and follow up and remind them. But if they think something is crap, they're gonna just put it out there, and it really will ding you on the book sales page, but also, like you said, the reputation. So it's just not worth putting out garbage. Like it's gonna reflect poorly on your content and your message. And one of the tools that I've used, my first book, I joked that I knew my first book was ready to hand off to the editor when I was sick of it.
Right,
I was
right.
so tired of it because I was reading it out loud. I read it out loud 3 times in 3 days in order to try to catch the things that you can read it and not see it. I had to say it out loud. My second and third book, I used Speechify. And for my third book, I actually used Speechify not just at the end, but I was using it as I was writing chunks of text. I would write for a couple of pages, and then I would listen to it. And as I was listening to it, I would pause it and make changes and then start it over again. And what I loved is that it was a feedback loop that helped me strengthen. So Speechify is a great tool that plays anything, PDFs, websites, Google Docs, whatever. And Grammarly, the paid for Grammarly, has made. I'm not a person. I don't think of myself as a writer. I've published 3 books. I'm working on a 4th. I'm going to keep creating content that's written content, but it wasn't something I was drawn to. So for me, like, these tools have strengthened my writing skills, and my own, like, my feeling about writing has changed. I don't feel negative about it anymore. It's just a process I have to kind of get into. So I just think anyone out there who's thinking about writing a book, like, don't let a learning disability or a fear or angst like get in your way. There's a lot of tools and a lot of resources, and sometimes it's just about finding the right kind of community to be a part of, which is a lot of what it sounds like what you're offering is just bring people in and coax them through. Okay, like, you have this great idea. Like, let's talk about how that works in a written format.
Well, and save them a lot of rewrites, and making sure the book is doing what they want it to do. Because a lot of times they don't think about the end in mind, and that is it will determine how you write it, what you write, the voice you use, the words you use. It is like, it's huge. It's absolutely huge to do that, and it will save you in the long run at the end. And one of the problems with the reviews nowadays is people are so suspicious of AI books that they will nail you as much as they possibly can if it doesn't sound like a human.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it was a human, if you did a personality in there, they're going to be suspicious. If you write it really monotone, they're going to be suspicious. So there's, if there's poor grammar, they're going to be suspicious. So there is a lot of, I think it's an instant, we don't want a book to be AI unless they're verifying that it's AI, for at least in the reviews that I'm seeing come across.
Yeah. That piece you just said about knowing what the book is for and the message and the strategy around that. I host I hold these 30-minute book launch strategy sessions with people. I call them brainstorming sessions to kind of tone it down a little bit and make it a little more friendly. But I always say, like, tell me about your book, and they can talk for 5 minutes about their book. They have no problem talking about their book. And then the second question is, so tell me how this book fits into your overall business strategy. Like, how does a reader of this book gonna like come into your world and start buying things from you? And then that response is like a gotcha question, like the and I'm like, okay. Now, often I'm not meeting with them until the book's written. And part of the
Mm.
reason I wanted to create the BizBook Publishing Hub was so that the people I was working with met with people like you at the very beginning of the process. I've started to say to people, I don't care if you're just thinking about writing a book, I will still meet with you. I mean,
Right.
you're nowhere near hiring me about launching. Like, you
Right,
don't have a
and it's so important. I mean, I have to say, brag session is every author that is stuck with it past the first little hump before they get their books published. They have driven business to themselves from the process, and we're talking big deals, not little deals. And they're surprised, and I'm like, but we got clear on the language, we got clear on the audience, we got clear on the need. So guess what you get to do? You go out there and you're very confident about it, and you separate yourself from everybody else, so of course business is coming to you because you spent the sweat equity to get really, really, really clear.
I have found this too. I've told people that if they do this in the right order before they even have a book, they will be in conversation as a business owner with their likely prospects and referral
Right.
partners. And that leads to new media and new revenue opportunities all the time. Unexpected opportunities will come their way. And they, even though the book doesn't yet exist, they
Right.
position themselves as a would-be author. And so people will relate to them that way. And then they follow through with a good book, and that will just further
And then they have
reinforce.
the pre-sales all ready to go to make the publisher, if they're working with the publisher, happy. But it also feeds the funnel.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful thing if you're willing, but it does take work. I mean, writing a book, people think it's super easy, but to do a good job, it takes some work.
I'd love to actually hear about some of these successes that you've had, the clients you've worked with have had, around, now that they're an author. I've been talking recently about how being an author opens doors, that
Right.
when you're first writing a book, particularly as a person writing a book to help you grow a business, you know, probably the first goal is just write the darn thing, and then it's like, hey, now it's a book. But the doors start to open, the possibilities start to be revealed that you couldn't have conceived of at the moment you first started writing. And I'd love to hear a little bit about some of those moments that your clients have had, your authors have had. Now that they're authors, this thing is now happening.
So one of my favorite clients, she was just so fun to work with. She was a hoot. Her book was about how to rewire your brain, and she was recovering from significant health issues. And so there were little hacks. And so it was teaching people that no matter how significantly bad the health is, there are things you can do to improve it, not heal it, but improve it. So we were working on the book, and all of a sudden she's calling me up, Lisa, I got an international deal where she's a spokesperson. They're highlighting her book. They're so excited. It wasn't even published yet. She is now one of their lead trainers. And by the way, hello, she's 76 years old. So she was like going mind blowing because she had been ill for 15 years, not been able to contribute. And now she's going on an international platform. She's excited. And the last I heard from her is a publisher has approached her and wants the second book. And she goes, I don't know if I have another book in me. I'm like, of course you do. Of course you do. And so now she has a publisher who wants to publish it and get out there. And so her books are selling like crazy. I'm seeing her all the time on speaking shows. And she's like, I'm living my real life now. I'm living the life I was meant to live. And she loves it because whenever, I don't know, she's so good at Twitter or Instagram. It's Instagram. She puts on something and everybody shows up and they all just resonate to her. And I'm like, I need to learn your secret sauce because she just knows how to engage them. And she has full programs all, and she's like, this is fun. I get to go do this. And, the opportunities, I could go on for hours of the amount of opportunities she has had. just from getting clear on the book and having fun with it.
I love this. And I love that it's someone who is at a point in life where most people assume that she's long retired and isn't trying to like talk to anyone beyond her three neighbors, but she's like got a platform, she has a message, and she's putting her story out there, and she's changing people's lives. That ripple effect is
And
having
her
a positive
legacy,
impact.
she kept talking, I want to create that. I've learned all these things for all these years. I don't want it to disappear. And because the health system is so struggling right now, she wanted to get this information that was cheap and affordable out there. And can I tell you, Robbie, I'm sleeping better because of applying some of her stuff into my own life. It's just like I think about her
Wow.
regularly. I'm like, wow, I get to have better sleep. I get to have better health because I helped her write that book.
That's really cool. So one of the things I also hear from this conversation is that it's important to find editors who are into your topic, because they'll add a lens because they're your likely reader,
Right.
and they'll know your audience, and they may suggest certain language or certain directions for marketing that just any old editor may not have. So finding someone, this is why the editor I work with, Linda Popke, for my second and third book was such a big opportunity, because she was the entrepreneur. My second book was all about how to create an audience before you try to sell something, and she very much was interested in that message. And then my third book was about leveraging Zoom, and she was hosting virtual events for an organization. And so she was like, I want to learn all your tips. And I was like, well, I'm about to write a book on that. And she says, oh, good. I'll learn all
Well,
the tips while I'm helping you edit the
yeah,
book.
and I've been working with healers for so many years. It was wonderful for us because I knew when her message was off. And there's some of the stuff I'm like, wait, this is not simple. Explain this. I want to know about XYZ. And so it was easy to put it in the book because I'm like going, I need to learn this myself. Right. But I also knew the language. I'm like, okay, whenever she tried to write academic, which a lot of us have this problem from school where we get this academic voice, and it wasn't going to resonate with her readers. I'm like, let's have it fun. And she's like, oh, I can talk like me. And I'm like, would you please, please, So it was good because I knew the audience and I knew the subject. Whereas this is why the hub is so wonderful. There are projects that I just turned down recently because I wasn't the right fit. It was not going to resonate. It wasn't singing to my soul because there's certain books I'm like, I cannot wait to work on this book. And there's other books, it's like, there's somebody else that would be a better partner for you.
Yeah. You just said something about the writing voice that I want to sort of underscore, because I think this was one of my hangups before I started writing my first book, was that I thought I had to write in a certain style. And my only reference for that style was writing papers in school. And I never loved that process. I mean, I did it. I never loved it. The fact that I now write the way I talk, and I use Grammarly to make sure that I'm not speaking, writing in passive voice, and I've gotten much better. My writing has gotten better because it catches that. And so I'm thinking differently about how I even say the things I say. And then I can use Speechify to listen to it back to see whether it flows. It has made writing just a lot less painful because it's just me. And now we have tools where you could just like record yourself or do a video recording and take the transcript, and then
Right.
ChatGPT can clean up that transcript and give you an outline, and then you can write from the outline. Like, there's still ways to get your message more easily out of your head than we had even 5 years ago. It's so much easier than it was my first book, and definitely your first book. So I love these different tools and tips, but you don't learn these things unless you're in an author community. And one of the things that I've really loved about working with you and the other hub partners is that we are hosting these free virtual networking events for writers and authors every other month. We are also hosting networking events for the hub partners to get to know each other in the opposite months. I would just love to hear you're one of the first people who signed up. And so thank you, before it was fully an idea, when it was just like a fledgling idea. And now, a year ago, actually, like this week, maybe even today, a year ago, when I'm trying to think of the math here, it was 2 weeks before Black Friday that a year ago was like, oh, I want to play with this. So as of this recording, this is like when the idea of, should I pursue something around this whole book launch thing? And now to see this whole thing we've developed with all these experts in this great community of writers and authors, what's been your take on that? What's your participation been like? Like, any Any response to all of this?
Oh, it's been wonderful. I always like it when I can go. Obviously, busy entrepreneur, I can't always make the meetings, but I'm in discussion with one of the publishers and we're exploring different ideas and we're definitely in community. I'm building relationships with the other editors so that when the project comes by and it's a no for me, I know that they will go in good hands. And so it's wonderful to always, because I always think you can't have enough editor friends because editors, a good editor gets burnt out. So that's what the
Yeah.
problem is as soon as somebody is really really good, it is like pile on waiting list for over a year. It's really hard to find really good editors, and so I'm always in the game of finding good editors who are willing to, because it's not competition. It's actually, how do we get these books out there in the best way possible and find the right person to help support each author.
That last piece about, it's not competition. I love this. And I was really seeking a certain kind of person to join the hub. And one, I was looking for people who's had interest in and experience working with entrepreneurs because I was looking for a space who could help entrepreneurs with books.
Not
And I kept
many.
thinking that one existed and I just didn't know where to look. And I did research calls with like dozens of people in 2 or 3 months. And they were like, well, when is this thing going to be created that you're talking about? And I was like, what? Okay, I guess. All right, I'll throw up a Google form and see where it
I
goes.
think I started twisting your arm about it too. If I
Yeah, I
remember
was sort of
correctly.
like, yeah, we want that. And I know about like a nonfiction space that I thought would be it, but nonfiction is a broad category.
It's huge. It's
It's
huge.
memoirs, it's travel. I mean, it's self-help. Some of that might fall a little bit into the world of what we're doing here, but when I describe business books, I mean a book written to grow a business. I don't mean a book about business. Like a book on mindset could be a great book for a person growing a business. It could
Right.
help also people who are thinking of getting help in their own work in a day-to-day 9 to 5 or something like that. So I'm always like, are you trying to use this book to grow your business as a speaker, coach, consultant, and or like a online course creator? And then I think, okay, well then that differentiates this from other books out there. But we need experts who understand that difference because that'll change the questions you'd ask. Because I have an author I work with who hired a fiction company to publish her book, and her book is not a fiction book.
Ah,
It's a business book to help her grow her business. And she was on air with us talking about the fact that they were editing direct quotes. She had done all this research and she went back and forth for months because they kept sending her versions where they edited the direct quotes in her book. And she was like, can you please stop doing that? These are direct quotes. And like they just kind of missed the concept of what she was doing it for. And they couldn't give her any advice about the marketing of it because the marketing of it is different. And so she thought, oh, a person's going to help me publish my book. I'm going to pay them all this money and they'll help me. But it was just like the wrong fit. And
yeah.
that's why I was like, we have to create this BizBook publishing hub so that, entrepreneurs who want to write a book have an audience of experts and also fellow writers and authors to connect with so they can learn something.
Well, and it's just very different to be an entrepreneur versus corporate. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of, understanding, I help a lot of people write their memoir-ish biz book, but there is a particular way of doing it and positioning it and making it so it's just not a misery memoir, right? So you want somebody who understands the differences so how to position the book so the right audience will find your book, find your message, and want to work with you.
I've been thinking about this because I run this Kindle cross promotion twice a year, and I might add a third. And
Ooh.
we just getting ready for the next one as we're recording this. And there's someone I know who wrote a really excellent memoir, and it's about her travels. And you know her too, 'cause she's in our content and connection club. And I loved her. I loved her book, and I listened to it, and I was edge of my seat. It was great writing, great storytelling. death-defying experiences. Like, I know she's alive and well today, and I was like scared for her throughout the book. Her experiences traveling solo around the world as a woman. And yet I was like, and I know she wants to be doing more speaking, but like it's not positioned as a book as a speaker. Whereas
Right.
someone else can write a book about their like health crisis, which is somewhat memoirish, right? It's about their health
It can
crisis,
be. It
but
can
then
be.
it's also a how-to, a lessons learned, a like, here's what you could try. And it's sort of clear that there's a message beyond, I'm going to share my experience.
And it's backed up with not just their experience.
Yes, and I think that line, I've been thinking about it because I'm like, I want to support this author, right? And like, what I mean, I talk about her book all the time, but it's like not a fit. And so I've been playing with like, where is that line for how I define like what comes into the space that I'm creating. But I love that even the experts in the hub often do other types of books or other genres. And one of our hub partners wrote, hey, does anyone here know how to edit poetry? I got asked about that, and it's just not my thing. And it
Mm.
turned out there was someone in the group who had experience editing poetry. So, it's nice to know that we can bring other pieces of our experiences. Sometimes, like I know you do some stuff in like a more of a wellness space or spiritual space. Like it's good for people to know that they'll find someone they can relate to. Like your writing isn't just your writing, you want to bring yourself into it. And so different people in the group have different
Yeah, I
experiences.
mean, I also do the trauma narrative and a lot of and parenting stuff. I don't know why people come to me for parenting, but
Well, you have some experience.
I just just 8 kids, I keep trying to sell them, but Robbie, you're not up for it.
No, thank you. Although you got your kids off to college, so good job. I think you're off the market.
All but two. I still have two
You
remaining.
still have two remaining. So this has been really fun. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you any advice you would share with an author who's writing a book to help them grow a business. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. All right, Lisa, lay it on us. What
Well,
would you tell an author writing a book to help
one
them
of
grow a
my
business?
big advice is writing is a team sport. It is not, it's so much better. It comes out better if you work with a team and having them look at it and having them come up with ideas and juicing and just encouraging you on. When I run these groups of writing books together and people are like, I can't wait for that to get published, but you hurry up. All of a sudden, my writers are writing a lot faster because they're like, oh, people want to hear this. Team sport. It's one of those things where we have this illusion of watching the movies where people just sit there and all the words just flow and it's all beautiful and it becomes a bestseller. Now, I have yet to meet a person living that can do that very well. I mean, there's a few rare ducks that can. The rest of us, it's a team sport, and it goes a lot better if you get in community like what Robbie's offering and get together and have the energy of the group.
I love it. So I would love to also know how people can find you and follow your work.
Well, Castle Dreams Writing is my website, so you can find me there, or you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. So Lisa J. MacDonald on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. We're going to have all these links in the show notes at bizbookpublishinghub.com, including the link to your profile on the BizBook Publishing Hub, which is fantastic because it gives you a full sense of who you are, all your contact information. You also have a nice little download there, all the different categories. So bizbookpublishinghub.com is also where you'll find the invitation to attend one of our free virtual networking events for writers and authors. You'll find all the show notes, you'll find all the experts, and you'll learn about the Kindle cross promotion campaign that I run throughout the year. So go check that out. And Lisa, thank you so much for joining us for another conversation.
Well, thanks for having me.